Good morning. I am Rabbi Greg Hirsch. Some of you may recognize me from Interfaith Thanksgiving events. I've been around this town of Wakefield. This is my 7th year here, and I work at Temple Emmanuel of Wakefield. So it's really my honor and pleasure to be here with you all this morning to get to experience your Sabbath. Some interesting similarities as we've been going through this service together. Jewish services also. We're focusing on gratitude and appreciation, and singing is what makes it all possible. I love the melodies, and how many places on earth can we sing in public, intergenerationally? So we're all, I hope, feeling a little bit uplifted after that gratitude, after that singing. It's what Sabbath is all about. So, Rabbi, my frame of knowledge is Judaism, so you would think I'd come here and talk to you about the psalm we read, or the passage from Joel, the prophet. But actually, what I found most striking was what we just read, the gospel lesson from Luke about this haughty Pharisee who thought he was better than everybody. So before I get into my interpretation, my understanding of what we can learn from this parable, we have to make sure we're all on the same page. So a Pharisee, pop quiz. Can anyone tell me what a Pharisee was or is? Who are the Pharisees? When might I have met? When could we have met a Pharisee? What period were they living? What did they do? They're the bad guys, right?
Were they supposed to be sort of the intelligentsia or the very high level? It would have been during the Roman occupation also?
Absolutely, yes. So very good. And if you weren't able to hear, these were leaders among the masses, among the people, and they're unique to Second Temple history, which started off under the Persians, and then the Greeks, and then finally the Romans. And throughout this period, Israel was not sovereign, corruption was rampant, and the Pharisees were one of 3 sects of Judaism, and there were plenty, just like today, plenty of secular Israelites who were non-practicing, who believed in the economy and Roman ways of living. So the 3 Jewish groups were the Sadducees, Sadokim, the Pharisees, Perushim, and the Essenes, the monastic type Jews who lived in the desert seeking purity. They rejected everything happening in Jerusalem. But the more famous ones are the Sadducees and the Pharisees, these two groups that have different forms of leadership. The Sadducees were responsible for all the temple rites. They were there to make sure that the sacrifices happened at the right time, at the right place, and that God would be pleased from these sacrifices. So they're sort of the traditional Torah-based movement, and the Pharisees come along, and they're the populists. They have a different message. In fact, the word Perushim, Pharisees, has 2 meanings in Hebrew. One is to split, to separate, like the Perushim, the Pharisees. We call our Torah portions a parsha, Perush. You hear the similarity. A parsha is a Torah portion. We split the Torah into 52 Perush, parshiot sections. So to be a Pharisee means to reject what the Sadducees are up to say, we're doing something different, we're separating ourselves. And also, Perush means to explain, to interpret. So the Pharisees were looking at the Torah and saying, all right, I think there's more going on here than what the words are telling us. So the Pharisees believed in an interpretive lens for the Torah, and that we can extrapolate wisdom from the Torah. Things that are not specifically mentioned in Torah, like angels or demons or an afterlife. These are the concepts of the Pharisees that were really motivational for a lot of ancient Israelites. That's how they got their following. Populist movement, And they were preaching things like the afterlife, which the Sadducees said, no, when you die, and that's the end. So that's a little bit about the Pharisees. The populists, they had the masses behind them, and they were teachers. Later, after the destruction of the Second Temple, the Pharisees largely became the rabbis, the rabbinic movement, Judaism. So that's a lot of extraneous history for you. And a little bit about who the Pharisees were. So now I want to focus on our gospel lesson for today. So just to remind you, it's on page 11 if you want to take a quick glance. It's a story about two people, a Pharisee and a tax collector. The Pharisee believes he's going straight, God loves him because he fasts twice a week, he gives a tenth of his income to charity or to the temple. So he's checked all the boxes. He's doing great. But here's this lowly tax collector that everybody hates, and he's just beating his chest and screaming out to God. What does he know? The Pharisee says. So of course the Pharisee is proven wrong, and the tax collector, who simply says, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. That's the prayer that was received by God. So that's sort of the simple meaning of this text, is that the people who exalt themselves, the people who think they're so much more righteous than the rest of us, might actually not have the full picture. There might be something that the lowly tax collector has that the Pharisee lacks. So this is a story about humility, about not letting your righteousness get to your head. The way I read this, JC is using the example of Pharisees to point to a natural human inclination. Something applicable. So right, the Pharisees lived in the Second Temple. You'll never meet a Pharisee. They don't exist anymore. But I think this parable, this message, is not specific to Jesus' day and age. It's something that we need to learn today for our own lives. It's applicable to all of us. We all, at times in our lives, have thought we are better or more righteous than the people around us. Or you could think in terms of pop culture, celebrities who think they're inherently better than the rest of us. That's obviously problematic. Some of my favorite lines in the New Testament are, judge not, lest ye be judged, and he that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone. These quotes remind us that nobody is perfect, nobody is free of sin. Rather than castigating people or thinking that we're superior, this parable teaches us that it's better to try to uplift our own spiritual lives. We should all be repulsed by the language in here of, God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even this tax collector. We all get humbled eventually. The spiritual life is supposed to increase our compassion for others, not our pride in ourselves. As JC said, all who humble themselves will be exalted. There's a parallel quote from one of the great Jewish medieval thinkers, Nachmanides, who lived in 13th century Spain. He wrote, "Lower yourself and God will lift you up." He then explained how we can all accomplish this: humility. I will quote, "I will now explain to you how to always behave humbly. Speak gently at all times, with your head bowed, your eyes looking down to the ground, and your heart focusing on God. Don't look at the face of the person to whom you are speaking. Consider everyone as greater than yourself. If he is wise or rich, you should give him respect. If he is poor and you are richer or wiser than he, consider yourself more guilty than he, and that he is more worthy than you, since when he sins, it's through error, while yours is deliberate, and you should know better." Nachmanides is teaching us that to increase our humility, we should always treat others around us as superior to ourselves in some way. As I said, it's a pitfall to believe otherwise, to think that we're better than others, or that we've already become the best people we can be. In Jewish thinking, it is much easier for a sinful person to earn merit than a righteous person. When some no-goodnik does a single act of charity, they can really feel the reward of their action. A single deed could cause a person to want to do more good deeds, changing a person's life for the better. But a righteous person, they're constantly doing good deeds. It's considered easy for righteous people to do good. So when a righteous person does a good deed, it's one of many. It's less impactful. The converse is, just as a sinner gets lots of merit when fulfilling a commandment, when a righteous person commits a sin, they can take a major fall. Like this Pharisee, who thought that he was so righteous, yet this Pharisee didn't go down to his home justified. In the Jewish tradition, humility is contrasted with pride. We need both. It's important to have pride in the things that we accomplish. But in this parable, we learn that the very things we take pride in, the things we think make us superior to others, can also be our downfall. It's hard to strike the right balance between pride and humility. Rabbi Simcha Bunim of Piasecza, Poland, lived at the turn of the 19th century. He taught, quote, "Every person should have two pockets. In one pocket should be a piece of paper saying, 'I am only dust and ashes.' When one is feeling too proud, reach into this pocket and take out this paper and read it. In the other pocket should be a piece of paper saying, 'For my sake was the world created.' When one is feeling disheartened and lowly, reach into this pocket and take this paper out and read it." We are each the joining of two worlds. We are fashioned from clay, but our spirit is the breath of God. I actually know many people who carry these two notes in their pockets. Whatever we can do to remind ourselves to be more humble can only benefit us. Judaism and Christianity have lots in common, and this lesson about humility is one we can see across all religions the world over. I invite you to try this out for yourself. Lower yourself. Begin to see others as greater than yourself. JC and I are sure that over time, this humility will lead to exaltation. Shalom. May you have a day of peace and rest.